Welcome, everyone, to the Meaningful Hearts podcast, where we discuss the everyday questions that make us or break us if we let them. With your hosts, Drew and Daniella. Take our hands and let's walk this journey together.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Meaningful Hearts podcast. Today's topic is reflecting on 2023. It's a little cliche, but Drew and I have talked about the importance of reflecting on your year, and really on a daily basis and even on a weekly basis. So it's very fitting. And as we were putting together this episode, I came across some questions that I thought would be good for the both of us to share and discuss. So here we go.
Woo! Or wee!
So the first question, I will let Drew answer this question first, and then I will answer it. Unless you want me to answer it, then we could do that too. What do you think?
We'll switch back and forth.
All right. So you can answer the first question, and then I'll answer it.
Okay.
So the first question is, what was your biggest time waster this past year?
I would say my biggest time waster would be... I played some video games. I'd say any time spent playing video games.
Funny. As I was asking you the question, I was answering it for you in my head. I thought video games.
Listen, video games are fun, but they're a big waste of time. And if you don't, there's nothing wrong with it. But at the same time can get away from you. So I would say video games, social media, that media button, like you could see the tracker and it shows you how much time you've spent. Sometimes we end up just going on there and not realizing upon waking up. So I would say those are the two biggest time wasters, I would say.
For you?
I would say, yeah. I mean, any leisure activity, in my opinion, is a time waster, but is it needed wasted time, right? Do you still need time to enjoy yourself? I mean, if we really sat there and dissected every waking moment of our life and say, oh, that's not productive, that is, we've wasted a lot of time.
Sure.
But at the same time, are we going to hold ourselves in prison for, doing extracurricular fun things that don't really involve, being productive, I guess, if you want to call that productive.
I guess it's an interesting take on it. Because then I would wonder, is it really a waste of time then if you're enjoying yourself while playing video games?
I often think a lot about, I in the moment, I'm like, wow, I wasted an hour. Like, time we never get back. But are we so aware to the point where we're so urgent on getting things done in our lives that we sit there and like with like a razor blade cut out an activity to do and give it such a finite amount of time to do it? We're not as intentional. We don't have like a calendar that breaks down every minute of every day. We think, well, I'll get to it when I get to it. These are the things I solely focus on. And we think our day really consists of these few things. But in reality, if we really sat there, you might have done a few things for a couple of hours, but the rest of the time you're just sitting there doing nothing. I don't know.
Yeah, that makes sense, I think.
Yeah. Like watching a movie.
I wonder if that's a time waster.
It is. It's just like it's a video game, right? Same thing. It requires time. You don't get anything out of it besides the entertainment. I would say entertainment, right? You don't get anything besides the entertainment value out of it. And then, yeah, I mean...
Excuse me. See, for me, I think about time wasting. I guess I think about time wasting a little bit differently than you, because my answer to this question was actually stubbornness and procrastination. Those were my biggest time wasters in this past year. Reflecting on it, my procrastination really came from overwhelm because I think I've talked about this before. I know you and I have talked about this before, how I just feel like there's always something to do. Uh, in my field in particular, there's always, I mean, there's always something to do in general, but in my field in particular, in my experience, I feel like there's always something to read, some article that to focus on, some seminar to do, some workshop to do, something that could always be helpful to the people that I work with. And so when I would think about all of these things, I would get so overwhelmed that I wouldn't end up doing anything. I would end up procrastinating and not doing any of it. And then I'd get upset with myself for not doing anything. And then with not procrastination, sorry, with stubbornness, I felt like stubbornness was the biggest time waster for me, because there were moments, like looking back on it, there were moments where I was in a moment of stubbornness, or like I wouldn't want to do something simply because of how I was feeling, mostly in relation to the way that I felt about my relationship with my mom and my brother, because I'm stubborn in that sense. And because I was, I guess, in a lot of ways stuck in the way that I was feeling about things, it really did get in the way of healing in a lot of ways and letting go and being at peace. So I guess when I think of time wasters, I think of more of that type of stuff versus actual stuff, because even in like video games and watching movies, again, the question I pose is it really a waste of time if you're enjoying yourself? Now, if you're spending 5-6 hours playing video games and you find yourself like in that loop, then I guess I could see it being more of a waste of time, but I don't know.
Well, this is the thing, right? So you say procrastination.
Mm-hmm.
You should be doing more productive things in your field, right? But when you procrastinate, you end up doing things that you enjoy, or your things that will waste time, like playing video games, watching a Netflix episode.
Sure.
So it's almost like those are, because they give you a sense of like good feelings, right? You enjoy them. There's an accomplishment from watching 12 episodes of a first season of Netflix, right?
Sure.
It's huge. So even playing a video game, you hit that switch, you get that what do they call that?
Dopamine.
A dopamine, right? You got to hit a
Mm-hmm.
dopamine, and you move on to the next thing. And you're in the back of my mind, I know I'm doing this, but I'm like, damn, I should really be doing that. I should really be doing this. I should really be reading, or I should really be working on this. But you said, you hide away from it. So in a sense, it is procrastination. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. So that's the first question. I think it's important for people to ask themselves when reflecting on your year or
Yes.
our year. Yes, your year. People listening. Y'all lost my train of thought.
Year.
I've lost my train of thought. So yeah, I think it's a good first question to ask yourself. Ready for the next question?
Sure.
What are you proud of for having accomplished in 2023?
Well, I made a big career move in 2023. I moved forward in something that I've wanted to hit by the end of the year, hitting a milestone. I didn't necessarily hit it directly, but I made a good, significant jump in my career. So that was an unexpected turn of events towards the end, which got me there. So that was, I'm pretty proud of that, and how far I've come in the previous year. So that's one of my biggest. Always, I mean, I always highlight this. I guess I'll always, yes. I'm proud of our relationship and how far we've come in our relationship, and the discussions that we had, and how much more confident I know I am in our relationship, and thinking back to some of the hurdles maybe we had in discussing certain topics that we may be afraid of, that would maybe make us feel differently about our relationship. I think those were big steps. And looking back, like, wow, we're even freer now than we've ever been, more liberated, I think, in our relationship. So that's huge.
Excuse me. Yeah.
Coming to a close and celebrating another year together, big accomplishment. So,
okay.
And fitness, I think.
What about fitness?
Well, I would say staying in the groove of things and pushing myself, learning new techniques. I got to see Tarun. Tarun came back into town after not seeing him for probably 8 years, but 3 years out of the country. So actually coming into the country, hanging out with him for a couple of weeks and having gym sessions together, that was huge. And being able to like go over some techniques and things that I didn't know, or things that I was like kind of struggling with, and getting some feedback, having somebody that really lifts, give me that feedback, was like really, really big. So those are some things I'm proud of. And as far as keeping up my fitness for another year, that's tough. A lot of people fall off after 3 months, or they hit the warmer months and that's it. But I've been going strong for almost 4 years, 4 years plus. So that's the longest I've ever kept it going.
Woohoo! 4 years.
Yes.
Well, thanks for sharing. Those are good answers. I wrote them down in case you didn't notice.
Stop distracting me.
So,
okay, your turn.
For me, I think one of the things that I'm most proud of from 2023 is how much I've grown in my ability to have healthy confrontation. I come from a family dynamic that healthy confrontation was, I want to say, non-existing. I think a lot of people come from families where the confrontation is either you get the silent treatment for upsetting your parent, or, you get the silent treatment and then act like nothing happened. That's very big. I'm going to get mad at you and not talk to you for a few days, and then I'm going to just randomly start a conversation. And I think the more confidence that I've gained in myself professionally, that's probably where I developed healthy confrontation the most. Because earlier this year, I had a conversation with my supervisor, giving her feedback on what I thought. And I was scared. I was super nervous. I had several conversations about it before even thinking about sharing my feedback with her. And I was nervous. I was afraid that she was going to respond defensively, because that's how people can respond to confrontation. But I learned skills. I did research. I taught myself how to communicate, especially in confronting somebody and challenging one. I mean, I do have the benefit of being able to challenge clients and confront clients, but even then it was something that I struggled with. So I think really coming out of my shell and being able to have healthy confrontation and have that uncomfortable conversation with several people, not just my supervisor, but with my clients. And even in our relationship, I know you mentioned, one of the things that you're proud of is confidence in our relationship and having had uncomfortable conversations. I think even within that, for me, healthy confrontation really played a role. And I think that's one of the things that I am most proud of. I'm trying to think of other things that I am proud of, but that's definitely the first thing that comes to mind.
I think those are the most important, then, the ones that come like straight to the surface, right? Those are the big wins. There's so many wins throughout the year. I could sit there probably and go through every little thing, but I think the big wins, right? The bigger.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very big on like little wins too, but in thinking about doing this exercise with you and sharing it with our listeners, for some reason, like the first half of the year the reason is that it's the first half of the year. So we don't reflect, it might be good to do a mid-year reflection or quarterly one. But in any case, complete side note.
Oh, here we go.
But the first half of the year, I remember some things, but really the things that stick out to me is like the last half. And I think it is important to have both things in mind. I know that one thing I'm also very, very proud of is actually has nothing to do with me, is my nephew and how much he has grown. I think we shared this on the podcast, but I actually donated a part of my liver to my nephew last year. And, the first 6-7 months of 2023 were very challenging. He went through a lot. He had complications post surgery, and a lot of different hurdles that he had to go through. And to see where he is now versus last year and even a few months ago, it's something that I'm super proud of. And it's a little selfish of me because I get to say, hey, like, I contributed to that. Of course, I think with good deeds and the things that fulfill us when we help others, there's a little bit of selfishness, but it's not a bad kind of selfish because it's just genuinely rewarding. So yeah.
That was a great list. Good ones.
Yeah, I know. I have great lists.
Yeah. You had time to look at the questions.
See,
No. I like it. I was just kidding.
Before we started recording, I will say I asked Drew if he wanted me to share the questions that I found, and he said no. Think it's better when it's on the fly.
It is.
Catches me off guard. So
it is because I was listening, like me going off the cuff with those versus me sitting down like, oh, wait, now I got to sit there and think. Hold on.
Sure.
I think it was better that way because you have to jump or not.
Yeah.
Jump or not.
All right. Next question. Mm-hmm. You've kind of touched a little bit in your answers from before, but still a good question to explore. What has been the most challenging part of 2023 for you?
I would say making a career change or making that movement in the way it happened was definitely not the way it was foreseeable for me. So that was probably one of the biggest, making an adjustment, meeting with new people and joining an organization that I really only knew so much about, but joining a different industry and utilizing my skills to try to work with that was definitely it still is a challenge. One of the biggest challenges because it was a huge overhaul and accepting new responsibilities that I never had before. I think those are some of the biggest challenges of the year. As far as being mentally tough during some really trying times throughout this year, and being able to compartmentalize and not lose my mind was another big one. I would say there's some pretty stressful moments in there.
Yeah, you also moved out this year.
Yeah, I did, but it was really what was tied to that, really. Like just a new, like, I guess being back out on my own where I wasn't before. Definitely just felt like a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah,
with a lot of things, and the things that went with that afterwards were even more trying. So it was just really just keeping my head straight and being able to navigate through things. I mean, your support has helped me immensely.
I'm awesome.
But ultimately, it's me navigating, right? Having control of it the whole time. So that was really some of the most challenging. For sure.
Yeah, that's why I said, before I asked the question, I knew that part of the answer had come from the other questions. But again, it's still a really good question, not just for you and I, but for those listening. It is important to explore, what your biggest challenges are, because it's actually in your biggest challenges where you learn the most about yourself, where you become the most resilient, where you should say, wow, I did all of that in 1 year. I made all these big moves. And even little moves, stepped out of my comfort zone. I challenged myself. I took a risk. And I think that people will come to find that when they reflect on what was most challenging, they might realize something that they didn't realize before and be proud of themselves for overcoming those challenges.
Definitely.
Well, thanks for sharing.
Thank you.
So for me, I think the most challenging part of this year for me was really figuring out how to navigate my feelings about my family, because I think we've talked about this. I know you and I have talked about this, but I don't know if we've talked about it on this show too much, or I'm not sure. But in any case, within my family dynamic, it's complicated. And I have been doing a lot of self work, self reflecting, my own therapy, and trying to understand myself and continue growing. And it's still a challenge. It's been really hard for me to forgive those who hurt me when they haven't asked for forgiveness and they don't know how much they've hurt me because they're just ignorant in that sense. And there was this part of me that was really stuck in this, but why should I have to do this? Why should I have to be the bigger person with them? My mom, more so than anything else. Why should I have to teach her how to treat me? And it was really like in the last month or so, after attending Tony Robbins, where I was like, ultimately staying in my stubborn state and staying in my feelings is exhausting. It's very tiring. And I still find myself getting annoyed or getting upset or getting frustrated, but at least it's not as intense. And I think, like I said, that was probably the biggest challenge for me this year, is really figuring out how to navigate my feelings and ultimately get out of my own way, because that's what happened. I'm being stuck in this like state of, it's not fair. Like, why is it not fair? I think I needed it, but I also think in a lot of ways I've learned that somehow, some way, I gotta let it go. Because if I don't, I will end up like those who stay in victimhood. And I don't want that. So that was I think the most challenging thing for me. You're just like nodding your head like, yeah, I left Drew speechless.
I mean, if anybody knows the challenges of that, and even I have to bite my tongue sometimes when she's trying to cope with it in her way, and I'm like, fuck that. This is what we need to say. But like I said, it's hard. It's easier to, I guess, do that than do the other thing. But it's I guess it's a conflict back and forth. So seeing that and being privy to it is hard. I know how hard that is for her. So I really do appreciate her pushing forth and being her best self. She's truly truly amazing.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that. I just thought of something. Before we started this episode, we said that we were going to take turns answering the question first. Yeah, and you've answered all of them first.
Yeah, it's okay. Because notice I don't have the questions in front of me, so it makes sense. The questions in front of me. So I'll just do it off the cuff and just be the superstar that I am.
Okay. So I have a bonus question, and this one I'll answer first, and you can answer second.
Okay.
So it's I don't know if it's a bonus question. Whatever. Let me not go down that rabbit hole. It's just another question. So the question is, what was the best and worst memory? So it's a 2-part question. So for me, the best memory, I guess the best and worst memory is actually the same. So when it comes to our relationship, I'll start with the worst memory. The worst memory was really how much I was struggling to overcome traumas that I have because they were affecting our relationship. And it was hard. I know there were moments where you and I, we would be laying down and things would hit me, like these really strong feelings would hit me, and I would just break down crying. And I remember I felt badly because I felt like I was just overtaking and I was putting a damper on the mood, our relationship. So I would say that component of like the worst memory, and maybe one day on this podcast I'll go into specifics about the trauma itself, but not for right now. For now, we'll just keep it vague. um, but in that sense, I was constantly feeling like the sense of guilt, of this pressure, like I need to overcome these things because it's affecting our relationship. I'm not being as open. I feel disconnected. And I think in a lot of ways that was the worst part of it. But how that ties into the best memory is partially because it was out of those moments and out of reflecting and out of having your support that I was able to get to the best memories, which is realizing how our relationship, we just hit the 2-year mark, right? So we're having conversations about honeymoon phase and what that looked like, and I was really afraid that our honeymoon phase would end and then that we'd just become boring. And I think the best memory and the best part of 2023 was realizing that even though we are not in that honeymoon phase anymore, that it doesn't mean that our relationship is not still awesome and amazing and that we can't continue growing. I think learning that, if anything, we're growing more, learning how to communicate more, we're continuing to learn how to be open with each other. I think that really made it like the best memory. And then additional best and also worst because of us bickering so much was the trip that we went on this year. Our camping trip with my dad and his wife. It was one of the best trips as far as the views, the moments, the laughs, the cooking, like the experience. That was amazing. But in some way, I wouldn't say it was the worst per se, but there were some things within that because I was going through the things that I was going through and I was experiencing the disconnect, and you and I were like bickering and disagreeing a lot on certain things. And yeah, I definitely jumped around there, but I think I made sense.
Yes,
and you cannot steal my best worst memory.
And you definitely stole everything I was going to say. Exactly everything I was going to say.
Excuse me.
Yeah. So I'm just going to double up on that.
Excuse me.
So I would say for me and my experience with that is my worst memory would be her really going through and experience moments that she dealt with in her trauma and how it affected our relationship in certain moments, and being the support system and being there for her and being scared for her. Those are, I guess, hard memories because you're worried, right? You're like, I'm here to support her. It's affecting our relationship and I want our relationship to stay strong and good. And it's trying. So those moments are not the greatest memories, right?
Sure.
So I would say from my standpoint, it was quite a battle because it also challenged me as a man, challenged me as a partner to be able to hold strong. There are a lot of people that will just, I'm good. Why do I have to deal with this?
Yeah.
For me, I run towards it instead of away from it because I do love her very much. And I do know that there are things and traumas and issues that I have in my life that she's been there and stayed with me and supported me for. And I love that we can help each other, but we're both working on each other. It's not like this is my trauma, but you're going to have to deal with it. Tough. It's more like I'm working on getting it better. It's not right. It's not perfect. And you love me and you care about me. And I appreciate you being there to support me. So I would say those moments were really tough and we dealt with them together. So I think that we kind of are on the same page as far as that's concerned.
What a copycat.
I would say, yes, the honeymoon phase, the realization of the honeymoon phase and at the Tony Robbins event was not my greatest memory, but it became a liberating one because once I realized and once we've realized what that is, and that's just a phase or a season, and that things must come down and settle. When we settle, as far as our 0 to 1,000 RPM where we idle at,
yes,
it's really fun and exciting. Most people they go from the ceiling to face plant
Yes.
because they have a lot of problems with each other, but
Yes.
all the
Mhm.
extra stuff and all the extra fluff masks it. So we don't have any of that because we always work through our problems. So in that honeymoon phase, we were still working on holding ourselves accountable. So definitely really strong moments this year. I think year over year, we've had trying and strong moments that have propelled us forward. Bickering on the trip,
Mhm.
it was tough. It was
Yes.
it was beautiful, and there was so much going on, and we were in the wilderness. But yeah, we were bickering a lot, and I was like, this is not how we are. But we
Yes.
have. But it was a very necessary thing because now we can reflect back on it. Yeah, there were moments where we bickered. There were moments where we don't bicker at all, and everything's great. But that's
Mhm.
understanding that there's rough patches ahead. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Copycat stealing mine. It's so funny that I ended up going for at least to me it's funny that I happened to be ended up going first for that question. That was not planned. But anyway, so 4 questions just to kind of recap for our listeners. 4 important questions to ask yourself. You can do this with a friend, you can do this with a partner, you can do it on your own and then share it with somebody else. But 4 good questions. What was the biggest time waster of 2023? What are you proud of? What was the most challenging part of 2023? And then what was your best and worst memory? And you'd be surprised at what you can reflect on, but important nonetheless. And Drew, I don't know if you want to add anything else, but if you don't, you look like you do.
I would highly recommend asking yourself this question and rapid fire answering. Don't give yourself the window to think.
Sure.
I mean, for me anyways, I think I give myself too much time and then I'm trying to add and take things away. And no, that doesn't work. Just rapid fire, put it down. Because the things that come to your memory are the ones that are the most impactful throughout the year. If you can remember it, it was pretty impactful.
Sure. Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah. You know, just
Good stuff,
a
babe.
three-pointer from
my.
downtown.
Anyway, so there you have it. 4 reflective questions. And also want to take a moment to thank you all for listening to us throughout 2023. And we look forward to bringing you more in 2024. And we'll see what it holds.
Ooh, she dropped a rhyme there.
Did I really? I didn't even realize.
More in 2024.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Hey.
Nice.
Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year.